Yeah, I think it's the autonomous piece. I mean, if you look at full self-driving autonomous, I could argue it's the most undervalued AI play in the market today. And I think autonomous cyber cab and the timing, I think it could get accelerated 2 to 3 years. And that's important in terms of from the sum of the parts. This stock, that could add $1 trillion of valuation alone. And you could be looking at 20, 30% more revenue per year that you even see today.
You think $2 trillion valuation over the next 12 to 18 months is reasonable?
I think it's conservative, potentially, if they actually execute on the vision that I see, not just in terms of autonomous and AI, but really it's more about that software penetration within Teslas from an FSD perspective. It changes the whole business model.
I'm trying to think of, so they have less than 10% market share in China, correct? BYD's got like a third. Demand for EVs is already sort of slowing globally. So if you have a pickup in tariffs and you have what is a more protracted trade war, what does that do to Tesla's prospects in China?
Sure. I think there's one big X variable. The bet for the ages.
Pardon the pun.
No, and I think the bet for the ages for Musk was betting on Trump because he is going to have a significant seat at the table when it comes to the China tariffs. I think especially on the AI trade, I fully expect there'd be carve-outs relative to Tesla and Apple when it comes to any sort of tariff back and forth. And I think within China, Musk has been that sort of 10% politician, 90% CEO. China just had a record quarter, if you look back. So I'm not of the belief that China is going to be a huge headwind. I think overall, this is a game changer for the story. You know, when you look at, I think over the next 12
Is there any spreading yourself too thin risk? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? The guy's running like all sorts of stuff, and now he's got a foot and a half in he's going to have a foot and a half in the Oval Office whenever he wants it.
Look, being essentially a whisperer, really a strategic advisor for Trump, I mean, it's going to just put another sort of balancing act for him between SpaceX, Tesla, Boring Company, and others. But my view here is that investors will take that because Musk having a strategic view and a strategic, I think, essentially chair in the White House is significant for AI. It's for autonomous. But most importantly, the biggest regulatory issue that they've had to navigate from an autonomous perspective, a lot of that now starts to dissipate. And that's a key part of the value. I mean, I ultimately look at this as unlocking $1 trillion of value in Tesla, AI and autonomous.
Simply because of Donald Trump's win?
Simply because of Trump's win. Because Trump's win changes the whole game for Musk, for Tesla, for autonomous, for FSD. They'll still have issues on states. This is not going to be, 100% smooth road. But this is a much different stock than it was a week ago with Trump in the White House.
Is there any risk whatsoever? I mean, I know. I mean, I ask you this just as like kind of devil's advocate. I don't know what the likelihood, if any, there actually is. But is there any risk whatsoever of a larger role, bigger than foreseen, within the administration to where he would potentially be a seller of stock?
Sure. So I don't see that Musk is going to take a formal cabinet position. We'll call him like an AI ambassador. He's going to create. I mean, he's going to be very strategic. I think in very key aspects on tech, on tariffs, on AI. But I don't see any issue from a cabinet perspective, selling of stock. And I'd also say broader from a tech perspective, whether you're an NVIDIA investor, Apple, Musk having a say in AI and in tariffs when it comes to China.
Today, just to add, I think Phil nailed it in terms of the reason for the move here. I think there's also this piece of this meme stock part, which of the 15%, there's some percentage that was just a halo around Elon. And Elon made a big bet around Trump. His next big bet's autonomy. And the probability that that's successful goes up a little bit. As far as how much of that's sustainable, I mean, the shrewd investor would say, well, what is the real play? What's the opportunity? And we've kind of outlined these numbers, but just to recap, is that if Tesla gains 50% share of the U.S. ride-sharing market by 2030, which actually I think is a reasonable target, we'll save that discussion for another day, but that would add about 20% to operating income. And so stock's up 15%, that adds 20%. Now they can take this in other parts of the world, but a lot of it got priced in a hurry. I'm a big believer in what that means. The one piece that maybe wasn't priced in today is that if they sell more robo-taxis, Elon's talking about 2 to 4 million a year ultimately. That'd be about a third of total Tesla deliveries. I'll take the under on that. I think it's probably closer to 1 to 2, but that's another piece. So, Melissa, to answer your question, I think that this kind of fairly reflected or started to price in some of the robo-taxi opportunity.
Yeah, and that's where analysts and so many Wall Streeters got so bullish after that cybercab event. That's where they sort of said, you know, the market cap could be X, Y, and Z above what it is right now. In terms, though, Gene, of some of the other parts of Elon Musk's empire, like SpaceX, I mean, Trump has said we will put an American astronaut on the moon thanks to, you know, thanks Elon, I think, something like that. And I'm wondering if you think that there will be other impacts here that we are not even seeing, whether it be Twitter or SpaceX or some of the other ventures he has.
Well, he's got the golden touch right now and has the year. And so I think that, yes, there are going to be, SpaceX is a clear beneficiary here. Phil talked about potential that the tax credits are going to go away around EVs. Maybe they actually stick around for longer than expected, and so there might be another angle around Tesla. As far as what's going on with X and Twitter, that piece is that there's probably a benefit just around his ability to continue to grow that platform, just kind of in a more free speech type of world. And lastly, don't forget about X.AI. I mean, the whole AI piece, this potential around some regulation around AI, that diminished today. And so I think that this is still going to be pedal to the metal in terms of what it's the infrastructure that's going to be built. And they just raised a bunch of money, obviously XAI, and I think that should bode well. So I'm stretched to try to find out how this could play out negative for Elon.
What if he steps down and he becomes the chief efficiency officer or whatever that office is going to be called? I mean, would that be a negative for Tesla stock?
As long as he's showing his face and on earnings calls and there's a perception that he's a part of this, that's probably 5-10 hours a week. I think investors are going to be okay with that because they've just grown desensitized to the number of things that he has going on. By my last count, 5 companies. And now you add this to it. I think that there's kind of a point where people just fall back on, hey, he's done it before and he'll be able to continue to do it. So any normal person, this would be, Tesla would have sold off and said they're going to be spending some time working in the government, but this isn't any normal person.